Welcome to Failing for You, where I'll fail so you don't have to, or even better yet, so you can too.
Hey everybody, it's Jordan Yates, finally back again with another episode of Failing for You. I know I owe you all an explanation. I've been a little less consistent than normal, but luckily I've made it up to you by getting a really wonderful guest. Everybody say hello to Robert. Or Robert, should I say you should say hello because this is a one-way street of talking.
Yeah, I was going to say I probably wouldn't hear them well. Well, hello, everybody, and I'm honored and glad to spend time with Jordan.
Yeah, so Robert and I were just recording for his podcast, and you guys know I'm transparent with you. So I was like, Robert, I haven't recorded in a minute. I need a guest. I've been wanting you on. Can we just hop and record on mine? And he was like, yes. So here we are. But
Yes.
I met Robert back at the ERA conference a couple of months ago, which is the Electronics Representatives Association, where I was giving some talks. And Robert, I think he interested me because I think he said something about, Robert, correct me if I'm wrong, kind of how you wanted to make a podcast, but you didn't want to just be another white guy with a podcast and you didn't know how to stand out. That was the conversation we had,
Right.
correct?
Right. After the breakout session, I came up and talked to each of you, and we had that sidebar conversation.
Yeah.
It was in that tone. I recall the same.
Yeah, so that's why this episode is something I've been thinking about for a while. And I kind of wanted to coin it something like why white men getting canceled is the best thing to ever happen to their creativity. And I think it's because for the first time in a while, they're realizing like, crap, like we need to really do something special to stand out. Like this industry isn't just one where we're just automatically in now. Like we have to do something to stand out. And I think women have always felt that because we always have felt like we had to do a little bit extra to be special, be seen, like we have to be on our game. But Robert and I love talking about, how the demographics of the industry are and how they've been shifting. So Robert, can you tell me more about your experience of what it's been like over the past few years as you're the main demographic, but you're kind of almost been being guilted for being it? Like, is that an experience you feel comfortable talking about?
Yeah, I do. I'm not sure exactly where I'll go with it because there's so many thoughts rattling in my mind.
You're like, why? She just came out of here with these crazy questions. Like,
well, so if you have an opportunity to listen to what Jordan and I just spoke about, you'll know I entered this industry as a 17-year-old right out of high school in electronics. And I was able to get my big break when I was 26 as a regional sales manager. And I remember going to the first trade show I was ever at as a sales manager for a connector company, Connector and Sockets. And I remember how white it was, just how white and how it was white old male. And it was strange because I've always looked at things through that sort of a lens. So I probably don't relate as well to some of those men who feel a bit canceled. Although I talk about this point often, I felt like there is no white privilege. There is no privilege to me as a white guy. I worked really hard. I graduated from high school and, I got drunk at the graduation party and
as you should.
missed 4 hours of I missed 4 hours of my first day of work. So I can't say I worked a full day of work the next day because unfortunately I was way too hungover. But I've been working full time since that next day after the graduation party in high school. And I raised my hand once and said, I want to be an assistant design engineer when the fellow left. I was 17 years old at that time, and the assistant design engineer left, and they let me do it. I didn't ask for more money. I wanted the experience. And so I've done a lot to kind of elevate my skills, teach myself what I need to know to be effective in my job. And for many, many years, I felt this fragility of, hey, don't tell me I'm privileged and got this far or this place because I'm just a white guy. But I started to realize things. That same place that hired me, Jordan, the owner told me when I interviewed somebody for a customer service position, he said, don't hire the black kid. You can't fire black people. And I realized it would be years later that I really connected the dots and said, hey, I probably wouldn't be where I was if I wasn't a white male. This fellow is prejudiced against almost everybody, women had a certain place and it wasn't as a sales manager. So I realized that I did have a bit of a privilege or a head start or something like that. And I started to become comfortable with the fact that I did work hard. I can pat myself on the back. I can look fondly back on my career. But I can also say there are times that I did have an advantage. Um, and I'll tell you another story. My kids are adopted.
Oh, really? That's so
and
cool.
both mixed race. Actually, my son was born in
Wow.
Humboldt, Texas. You know where that is, right? Yeah. I assume it's near
Yeah,
Houston.
I'm in Texas, so
He was,
it's all the same.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, it's a small state.
Yes, so tiny.
So, but I would drive this Mini Cooper around town. We never put plates on it. This was New Jersey on the front. We were supposed to, but didn't feel like it, didn't get around to it. I never got pulled over once. I think he was pulled over 7 times for driving without a front plate.
Oh my goodness.
And he would wear his hair in a bit of an afro. He's mixed race, but he kind of tried to look as African American as he could. He took pride in that part of his heritage. And I started to see things differently. And I've even had people tell me, I had a woman tell me at a business dinner, I'm so worried for my husband. He's a white man and I'm worried about him. And I said, we don't really have anything to worry about. So I can relate to it somehow, but you guys have to watch everything you say. And I say, well, maybe we should stop making jokes where we look around and say, hey, did you hear the one about?
Yeah.
And so what I've embarked on doing is I'm not trying necessarily to stand out. I'm trying to kind of recognize that my voice lands differently on other men. If a woman's saying, don't say that, if a Black person is saying that wasn't funny, it's kind of like, yeah, okay, you're too sensitive or something.
Yeah. Women were so emotional.
And yeah, you're too emotional. It's just a joke, all of that. So I started to realize, well, maybe it's just not funny. Maybe making a joke about somebody because of their appearance, their weight, their ethnicity, how their name is pronounced. Maybe that's just not that funny.
Yeah.
And I'm not, so I kind of started saying my voice lands differently when I say it to men. And I've done it in the place where I work, where people will say very often, okay, let's map this out. The man goes out and he gets the order and he brings the order in and she enters the order. And I say, time out. Why is the man getting the order and she entering it? Wilfred works in customer service. He enters orders. Sylvie's one of our best salespeople. So I just try to get people to start questioning that, because I probably have never felt attacked.
Yeah.
Other than feeling like, don't you dare say that I didn't, accomplish something.
Yeah.
That always kind of irked me, but I've become much more comfortable with the fact that I have some innate privilege, that, some privilege just being of the major demographic that runs businesses.
Yeah. It's so interesting too, because it's like, you're in a position where it's like, oh goodness, my electricity just went out for a second.
I see it's a little darker.
I hope the Wi-Fi continues to be okay, but we're having terrible storms in Houston, guys. So yeah, I think it's interesting where you guys have been in a position where you almost feel like you have to apologize for being successful. And it's like you said, sure, some people maybe ended up in positions for privilege and they failed upwards and they actually didn't deserve to be there. But it can be harder to swallow those comments when like you did work hard and you are where you're supposed to be because you did work for it. It wasn't like an accident, and it wasn't just because you were white, or a white male, should I say. So it is interesting, but I think I don't want to say fun, but it's entertaining to watch the industry go through these growing pains, just because for me, like, it's nothing new. Like, I'm used to these all, like, having to prove yourself, having to stand out and be extra, extra special for the same opportunities as somebody who is just regular. So like, I understand it, but also sometimes it feels like it could be a bit much. But I also feel nervous to say things sometimes because, I am white. I'm not I'm not a double minority. Like, I'm just a minority in this field, so it's always a touchy subject no matter what. But as you guys know, the theme of this podcast, Failing for You, is us being as honest and vulnerable as we can about our experience and how we've learned to deal with difficult situations. And it's not about coming out and being perfect, saying the right things and trying to figure it all out. Like, and that's why I love this podcast, because like I come on here and I'm like, guys, like this is what I am dealing with. This is what I'm trying to do. And I love my listeners because they will correct me as soon as I'm wrong. So if I'm approaching this incorrectly or insensitively in any way, someone will let me know. And I am always here for constructive criticism. So guys, if I'm just speaking from the heart, but my heart's probably misplaced, let me know. Like I'm here to learn. I'm not stuck in my ways. I'm not, you know me. So take it easy as we talk about these more difficult subjects, because it is something we're all dealing with, and it's new for a lot of people how these shifts are happening, and we shouldn't be expected to know how to deal with it perfectly, because things were a certain way for a long time and now they're not, and we're adapting. So I think that's always important to remember, because people just want to instantly cancel everyone for whatever these days. And honestly, it's getting a bit old. Like, let's just allow there to be a learning
Right.
curve, because it's required. We're not all just super smart and woke instantly. It takes time.
It brings me to a LinkedIn post. I believe it was LinkedIn. I'm certain it was LinkedIn. And it was something where I said I commented on a comment. I said something like that was one of the more sexist and misogynistic things that I've seen posted.
Mm-hmm.
And somebody corrected me and said that wasn't sexist. And I looked up the term and I said, you know what? You're right. Thank you. I will remove that term from my post, for my comment. And then this person said, now remove your pronouns. I said, what pronouns? The ones you have on your profile.
Yeah.
So some time ago, I put the he, him on there.
Mm-hmm.
And I thought, I had angst over that one, Jordan.
Yeah.
I thought, am I doing it just to be politically correct,
Yeah,
to fit into a group,
I remember that.
to get like, hey, attaboy, Robert's now one of us. And I didn't want to do it for the wrong reason.
Mm-hmm.
So I wanted to understand it. And I finally came to having a lot of discussion with a lot of different people to understand that by doing it kind of normalizes the use,
Mm-hmm.
and helps those that don't identify with he, she, her, him. It helps them feel that that they've got more allies out there, and it's something of a safe space. And I didn't do it for politically correct reasons. I did it because I don't really care if somebody wants to be called they. I find it a little unusual. I'm super fussy about my words, right? So when I have to say they and it's not plural, it confuses me. Right? But if I want to be called Robert and I've been known as Bob, and I was going to joke earlier and say I'm your plan B for Bob. But I'm often known as Bob, but my second wife now, my screen went dark. So
no, you're good.
I thought power went out here. She insisted on calling me Robert, but so I want to be called Robert. Some people still struggle with that. So I know you're a Bob to me, they'll say. It's like, I've asked to be called Robert. Can you just
I'm a Robert.
Honor that? And so you got me thinking about that post where I was told I should now remove my pronouns. And that offends people that I put that up there. And I think that so much of what you talked about earlier is that my demographic is, many of us are just not used to having to adapt to other ways of thinking. We don't like it. But I almost always go to this, and I don't think we did on my last talk with you, but it's all about being uncomfortable. Growth comes from being uncomfortable. Now you can chop off your finger and that's going to hurt a lot. That may not be the kind of discomfort you're looking for, but you really have to challenge yourself. I'm somebody who likes to exercise a lot. So to get stronger, to get faster on my bicycle, I have to work out harder. I have to do another hill. I have to do an extra set or another pull up, whatever it is. And it's the same with your mind. It's the same with your spirituality, your philosophy and your view of the world. You have to be willing to push outside that comfort zone, and there will be discomfort and it will be uncomfortable, but there's so much to learn. And if you're doing it for the right reasons, to grow, and you should be growing every day. I'm 61 years old, and I used to think I knew everything, but now I really feel like if I didn't learn something today, I haven't accomplished everything I could have. I might have
I feel
completed
that.
a file or filled out a report, but what have I learned? What have I challenged myself? And anytime I feel angst, discomfort, frustration, I'm not always successful. I try to say, okay, what can I learn from this?
Hmm.
Many will say, what is God trying to teach me? It's not my belief system, but for me, it's what is the learning opportunity here for me. And yeah, it's uncomfortable, but that's how we grow. And so many times people, in my demographic in business just don't have to. People have to adapt to their bad temper. They have to adapt to their bad jokes. They have to adapt to any number of things. But the last thing that was on my mind that I want to share too is a fellow I talked to on the Humpty Project, my podcast.
Hmm.
He had shared something called the Wheel of Privilege. And it's basically a wheel. I don't know how many slices are in it, 8 or 10 different slices, your gender, your background, your wealth, etc. And when you're more to the outside, you are less privileged. And when you're more on the inside,
Hmm.
you're privileged. And I'm pretty much dead center, except for the fact that I don't have a college education.
Yeah.
That's it. Uh, I'm lean. I'm not overweight. That's how we look at people that have excess weight, and we sometimes automatically assume they're lazy.
Yep.
Oh, they're not going to work hard. They don't have any sense of pace. They're not going to get the job done. We look at people and we have these automatic biases, and it's those biases and blind spots that I've been challenging myself over the past few years to check. And having a podcast is, if nothing else, keeping me accountable to doing that every day.
Yeah, no, I agree with that on the weight thing because I still think like that there's a movement for it, obviously it's not as aggressive as the whole like gender equality and race equality, but like I personally struggle with that. So I work out a lot too. I love working out, but a lot of people in my family are overweight. And my dad is, especially has always struggled with weight in his life. And he's very talented in sales and he works for a car, I guess, auto group. And he does well there. But he always felt like sometimes that kind of held him back in some ways because you look at like the people that are more successful and a lot of times they're slimmer, better looking and whatnot. And for me in my business, sometimes I feel like if I don't look good, that I won't do as well on LinkedIn, or if I don't look good, that like my video is not going to perform as well, like that my hair needs to be done, my makeup needs to be done, or if I look chubby from that angle, people aren't going to like watching me as much. And like there's sometimes where I legitimately don't want to make content because I feel like I look too fat and I'm just like, oh, people aren't gonna like take me seriously if I'm not cute, because like that's part of my brand is being cute and young and like whatever, fresh faced, and like what if I don't fit that criteria? And so it is interesting. And like a lot of times maybe we're putting it on ourselves. And we're limiting ourselves. So I try to just push through in those uncomfortable situations. And like my favorite saying people say is like, the do it scared. Well, there's like a do it fat. You feel fat, like don't wait to go to the beach. Don't wait to wear some suit.
Hmm.
Don't wait to make the video. If you feel fat, do it fat. And then just keep doing it. And like, what if your body never changes? Then you're just never going to do anything, so it's like sometimes we're not going to fit that perfect dead center in the middle, but that shouldn't stop us from trying to do it anyways, because I feel like we take these preconceived, I guess, ways that this society has made us feel disadvantaged, and then we put it on ourselves and we don't put ourselves out there. And then it's like you can't
Right.
blame society for holding yourself back because you're scared. So if somebody makes fun of you because like you put yourself out there and you don't look right, or you're not the right age, or you're not the right weight, like that's them, that's on them, but it's on you to put yourself out there. And like I was going to touch on it too, the whole the whole pronouns in our bio thing. I don't do that just because like to me, I think of it like more of a like a resume kind of thing. Like would I put my pronouns on my resume? And probably not. Like I guess to me it doesn't make as much sense. And I'm not against, people who change their pronouns and whatever not, but I think I've tried to make myself so neutral in the industry of like me being a woman doesn't matter. I'm just a person trying to be an engineer, that like I don't know, to me on LinkedIn it feels unnecessary, but to each their own. Like I feel
Right.
that it's irrelevant there, and I'm sure people are going to hate me for saying that, but like I don't think you have to have it on LinkedIn. I think if you do or you don't, that's up to you. Like that's cool. I know LinkedIn's trying to be more inclusive, but I think in terms of getting a job, like it really shouldn't matter. But to each their own. And if it makes you feel good to put them. If not, then don't. Like, I don't think there should be a pressure
Yeah.
to ever do it, because like,
Yep, I agree.
it's cool if you do, it's cool if you don't. But if to me, it's not that important to have on LinkedIn.
I feel, for me, I think on that point, I won't dwell on it, and I'm capable of dwelling on lots of things.
Amen.
But I think for me, as a 61-year-old, again, white guy, it probably not too many times it will benefit me.
Yeah.
It will actually, people will say he's just a bit of a flake, right?
Mm-hmm.
But I really don't care if that's people's projection. And I've never struggled with weight, but I wanted to go back to that because that really caused me to think about a lot of things. My stepfather, he passed away in his early 60s, probably, I think, a year older than me. He was 5'9", 430 pounds at his peak.
That's scary.
He worked and provided for us, but around the home, he was pretty much as kind of a non-entity as possible. He didn't do anything.
Yeah.
He just basically ate, slept, smoked cigarettes, and went to work. And so I didn't have a real positive role model there. And a lot of my family's heavy, and I kind of was very judgmental about that. They also, especially him, he ate just amazingly gluttonous amounts of food.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm talking 8 hot dogs and 6 cheeseburgers at once type of thing.
Yeah.
So I had to eventually come to grips with that and check, why do you have this strong bias against heavier people?
Yeah.
So when you tell me you feel heavy, I'm like, if you weigh 350 pounds, I'd probably say, you probably need to think about that from a health point of view. But I try not to judge. And so much of it comes from just who do you surround yourself? What do you know? Who do you know? A friend of my wife's, she's a pretty large woman, has struggled with her weight, has been on health programs to reduce her weight. But wow, she is one of the most energetic, on all the time, hikes and bikes and does triathlons, but she doesn't have your typical lean profile. She's got a big woman with extra weight, and I've recommended her for a few jobs, and she hasn't been successful winning them. And I wonder how many people say, oh, well, she's probably just, not going to work out. She's too heavy, or she's going to be a liability on our healthcare because of the way healthcare works in this crazy country where it's tied to small little pools of companies, and you can't have healthcare automatically unless you work. Who knows what the the ism there is about, I guess, weightism, we could call it.
Yeah, I think it's there's a term for it. I can't think of it off the top of my head, but yeah, I literally brought it up in therapy last week. I was like, it was like towards the end, I was talking about like body image and things like that. And I was like, so I have this really weird thing where when I see really overweight people, I feel really sad. And I realized it was me projecting onto them that when I've been heavier, I felt sad. So it's like we project so much onto other people and assume they feel these ways or that they have these tendencies just because of our own bias. And it's just crazy. It goes to show for things like weight, race, age, like everything, that it's like, check your own bias first. Like, don't assume these things on other people just because of the way you grew up or that you saw things or experienced life. And I think that's kind of like being the white male. Like, that's just one of the many ways that someone could be having a bias against them. And so I think it's just relevant in the media right now. And I'm sure it will pass with time, but I think it's just one of the many, many things in society that we put into a box, and we take turns on who are we attacking this month, who are we going to hate this week? And so you guys, gosh, it's been a couple of years now, though. It's kind of taken a while, but I think it's starting to dial back a bit. I don't know. In your experience, do you feel like it's still as much of a thing of people trying to cancel white men, or do you think it's kind of going away and we're realizing we can't cancel them if we want everyone to be equal?
I honestly believe it's overhyped. I've never once felt canceled in this,
in real life,
several years. In real life, I've never felt like I've been passed by for any reason because I'm a white guy. Perhaps there are situations that happened. I know certain organizations, I can think of academia, for instance, are, one could possibly argue, overly politically correct and hyper focused on just checking boxes and putting people in boxes. Now, I do believe in hiring the best person, but I also believe if you don't have an organization that's diverse, you're not doing the best you can for your organization.
Mhm.
So if you can find somebody that helps you become more diverse, and it doesn't matter if you're diverse, if you're not, don't have inclusive practices and
Yeah.
listen to those people's voices. It doesn't really matter if you have a diverse workforce if you're not going to listen to them. But I do think there's a time where you might say, look, we are going to hire the best woman, best person of color, or whatever demographic you're looking at, because we see diversity as an important thing that we're missing in this company.
Yeah.
I don't know that it's ever that well thought out. I think I've seen in education, I won't say anything that can tie back to any people, but I've seen people play the race card to their
Yeah.
advantage, just people who will just play the system and file grievances immediately, because they'll have a union supportive of that. And it's frustrating to see that, because they're really only reinforcing stereotypes and taking opportunity away from those that want to excel.
Yeah.
And that frustrates me. But for the most part, I haven't felt it. I could be a unicorn in that respect, but
Yeah.
I haven't felt an overwhelming concern that I am being canceled or my opportunities have been limited. I think that really, I think it's been overhyped in the media personally.
Yeah, the media does such
I'm going to
weird
give some
things.
comments that disagree, but
I know. I feel like even just recording this episode, like I'm gonna look back and be like, oh my god, like I should have said all these like really controversial things. Like this is crazy. But
well,
I also think like it's important to address them sometimes, especially if my whole thing is like I'm a woman and like I'm a woman in engineering and like people have made it a thing for me more than I have, because for me I'm just like an engineer, but people are like you are paving the way for other women and I'm just like I'm literally just doing my job, but all right. Like I'm not really like an icon. I'm more just like I'm just an example of someone doing it. And sure, I face diversity and like or adversity and things that I had to push through. And I've been in situations where I literally almost didn't get a job for being a woman, but like I'm also very tough. So when people tell me I can't do things because I'm a woman, I'm just like, bitch, please. So, and I just like do it anyways.
yeah,
But I think the whole point of like the sensitivity training and like sensitivity awareness is for perhaps the people who can't stand up for themselves, or maybe more for like children and things like that. But as adults, I feel like we should be able to have these conversations from the perspectives and lives we've lived without being so freaking crucified for every word. And yes,
yeah.
we make the choice by having a podcast. We make the choice by saying these things and putting it out there. And maybe we lose business, maybe we do this and that. But I don't think we've said anything overly offensive. Like, I think we're just sharing our perspective, experience, and observations. And I think that should be okay. And if it's not, then this whole social justice movement, then like, what is it for if we can't speak our First Amendment
Right.
rights, you know, like.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I feel I can have a conversation. I've had many with people that are very divergent in their views politically, or I can sometimes say philosophically. And as long as we can have reasoned discussions and it's not just talking points coming back at
Yeah.
me, just kind of regurgitated from a news feed somewhere, then I can have that discussion. If somebody's so closed off that I'm only going to have talking points coming back at me, then it's pretty hard for me to engage. But I ran for office when I was 20 years old as a
Really?
Republican in a Democratic town. Yeah, there was 4.5 Democratic voters to one Republican. I lost. I was an unknown, like you, Jordan. I didn't have a wealthy family. I had nobody who went to college. I was not connected. I was just pissed off that the town council put me through the mill to buy this little piece of land. I bought a house when I was 18,
Yeah.
so I had this little piece of land beside I wanted to buy. So I said, I'm going to run and take his job.
I love that.
And I went door to door and I sold hoagies to raise money. And I would tangle on social media with the local state senator. That social media then was letters to the editor, if you know what a newspaper is.
Come on.
Anyway, ageism, I know I shouldn't
Wow,
have.
you think just because I'm young, I don't know any old people that
Youngsters,
told me
kids
about
these
it?
days, you young ones. Anyway, but we would tangle on social media. And once we decided to get together and we went to a coffee shop and we talked and we said, we both kind of want to go to the same place. We just have a different way of getting there. we both wanted to get to the same place in terms of a just society. We just had a different way of getting there. I've kind of evolved, I'll tell you that, since then, being Republican. But definitely, or the Republican Party's de-evolved, I'll say. Now I know that's controversial to some, but I left all of that, and but I still have a lot of the same ways of thinking. I just find that there's not too many people who are willing to have those tough conversations with people who have a polar opposite viewpoint. It just becomes anger and talking points, and that's where I think some of the canceling white men thing comes from. It gets overhyped due to some. Well, what I see. Let me say something finally more controversial. Not
Ooh.
finally. I just think that cable TV to me has been horrible, just because it allows us to cocoon within an echo chamber.
It encourages.
And yeah, it encourages, advertisers can put up ads to a demographic very effectively, and everybody can stay cocooned within an echo chamber. And that again is where your comfort is. You don't want to be challenged to go outside of that. There's so much fear, and people fear falling out of that majority status. And what I like to say is, I see so many people desperately fighting to preserve a privilege that they deny exists.
Mm-hmm.
That's what I see. And that's where some of the, your early question about white men being canceled, I see more around hype and fear, and fear controls people. When you can divide people, then you can control those that are in fear. And I just don't, I like to be more self-aware. I like to be more critical, more analytical, more curious. And I don't believe everything I see on either side. If it's anti the ex-president, I don't believe it right away.
Mm-hmm.
If it's pro the current president, I don't believe that right away. But I do see a real effort through the cable news media to really paint things in their own way that continues to keep their viewers in fear. And I saw some of the same on the left-wing media, particularly around healthcare, health crisis, and COVID.
Yeah.
Just like I certainly believed in a lot of what we did as a world, really, to kind of shelter in place and limit access, because I just did the math. The mortality rate in the beginning of COVID was like 5-6%, and it was much more infectious than flu, and flu was killing like 65,000 people a year. I just mapped it out and said, if this gets to just 2 or 3 million infected people, it's going to kill as many as the flu. So I saw it that way. But then as it started to continue to drag on, it was kind of like we didn't start wearing masks and quarantining and closing down places to keep it from being zero. We now have methods to control it. We have I forget what the name of those medicines are, that like antiviral medicines that they call it, that we're helping to help people through and not die from it. And I saw people, it's like, no, there's still COVID out there. And I said, I get that, but we can't all just live inside our houses all the time. What is the effect of children not going to school and socializing? There's a lot of kids who can't learn through like a screen like this. And hey, there's some kids who loved it because they weren't being bullied.
There's so many sides to it, for sure.
Yeah. So I try to be like that, Jordan. I try to really look, and it's uncomfortable to do that. It really is. It's easier to say, I know everything. I've been around a long time. I don't need to learn. But I just don't want to be that person.
Yeah, no, I get that. And it's so hard having these conversations publicly sometimes too, because it's like, even when I feel like today I'm more on the side of like, just kind of general truths and like how I feel about a lot of situations and like how I'm like feeling in the moment, and opinions evolve and change over time. So I could feel so passionate about everything I said today and it change in a month from now. Like I am so young and so impressionable still that like, I just speak from my experience, like I said, but I think it's still funny too that I feel nervous about putting something out like this, talking about these hot topics. But on the flip side, I felt so nervous when I went on Automation Ladies and talked about my experience when I was like almost unable to get a job for being a woman. So like I was literally told to my face, I almost didn't get an interview because I was a woman. And as soon as they saw that, they were going to pass on me. And so like telling that story, I felt like I was afraid to be sounding whiny, or like that people wouldn't want to listen to me or find me like discredited because like I'm complaining about the system and I'm one of those people. So it's like, no matter what we say, whether we're on that side of it or we're on this
Right.
side saying like this is crazy that we're all like obsessed with this stuff, is like either way you can be crucified. So I just say what you're feeling, and as long as you're true to what you are feeling in your experience, like you can open discussions, but I don't think people should ever take what you say and make it like this is a definitive thing, you are wrong, you are bad. I say if we hear something we disagree with, we use it as a start to a discussion. And I hope that you guys listening take it as that, and you take Robert and I's vulnerability to speak about these things and our experiences as a way to start conversations amongst yourselves, with us, and other people in your community, because that's what we're here for. That's why we podcast. That's why we talk openly with people and allow people to hear us recorded and play it back, because we are okay with taking that social responsibility. And some things we talk about are funny. We're not always super serious. Sometimes it's just silly stuff, and like that's okay too. Just, I don't know, people need to chill the hell out. that's all I got.
I'm good. I want to have a session where I'm a sort of a rock and roll fan mostly. So I get a lot of inspiration from music, particularly the lyrics. And I want to have a fun session like that where we gather some people and we talk about, okay, what inspires you, motivates you, picks you up? What do you listen to that really gets you going? I'd love to have a session like that one day. And the other session I've said we should have in the industry is we should all have an acronym game.
Yeah.
And if you can name an acronym, you pass on to the next person. But if you can't, you have to take a shot.
Oh my gosh.
And if you get called on an acronym that's not in the industry, you have to take a shot too, or maybe two shots. So I have a feeling we could probably, well, you're younger than me. So
I don't drink very much. I cannot handle my liquor.
But I built up a bigger repository of acronyms than you, but you've straddled more industries than me. So there's probably more in oil and gas that I wouldn't know about.
I literally had a notebook on them.
We are the industry of acronyms.
Yes, indeed.
We could have fun with that one.
Oh my goodness, absolutely. Well, guys, I think we are just about to our time. I don't even think I fully introduced everywhere to find you, but I'll put it in the show notes. Once again, I think we mentioned it. Robert has a podcast. We will mention that. We will put it in the notes, a link to it. Robert, is there any goodbye notes you'd like to say to the listeners before we end the episode?
Stay curious, keep learning. I think I stole that from Santa, but it really is really good advice. It really is really good advice. Check your blind spots. Check your biases. If there's something that's making you feel uncomfortable, somebody says something, try to take a moment and think about why that is. And you might very well find that it's just some historical thing from your upbringing that you've never been willing to confront or even think about. So always poke around your own psyche before you react. Although I think you said on my podcast, you're a better teacher than you are a learner. So I'm not good at practice. I'm not good in practice at that. But over time, I've learned to go back and say, okay, let me ruminate over that just a bit. And ruminating is not bad as long as you don't live in it. Let yourself live in it, but make yourself incrementally better. One thought at a time, one word at a time, one action at a time, one day at a time.
Couldn't have said it better myself, and I definitely wouldn't be able to because I'm not as articulate as you, Robert. So thank you.
I've memorized that because that's a tagline on my podcast.
Well, there you go. If you guys,
so I have memorized that, but it really is how I do think that way. And don't beat yourself up when you're not perfect, when you don't have the makeup on, when you've gained an extra 5 pounds. Keep moving.
I love that. Well, Robert, thank you for coming on. And guys, thank you for listening and keeping up with me, even though I've been a little inconsistent with these episodes. So I appreciate you. And as always, I'm your host, Jordan Yates. And in the meantime, I'll be failing for you. See you next time.